Well, I'm going to give it a chance. We're back. 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 It should work. I don't really know what happened. Good morning, team. Good morning. Sorry about the trouble, guys. We had a pretty good audience there. The show today is too good. I have to do it. I don't have a choice. We have to do it. So I'm back. Um, Hopefully we get a good audience. Hopefully people. I might have to go back to my plan of recording these a little earlier and then debuting them at your time. But we're good. I think we're good, guys. I think we're good. Let me know if anything else happens, and we're going to give it a shot. We're going to give it a shot, team. I think we're going to be fine. So, the Atlantic had the fake news for the day. There you go. To get back on track, we'll skip ahead. All kinds of stuff happened yesterday. I mean, really. Yesterday was one of the most interesting days in the history of the world. I mean, not kidding. Like, it seemed like everything was happening yesterday. We're going to try and go over as much of it as possible. There's almost too much news yesterday. Too much went on. But we're going to do our best. And the first thing I want to bring up is a tweet from Jack Possibly. So Jack used to, I don't know if you guys know, oh yeah, bad news, guys. Bad news. Bad news. We got to take a moment here, team. Our man Fetterman had a stroke last night, and I'm not sure he's going to make it to 2024. Unfortunately, So let's pray for Fetterman. He is part of our Endgame plan. Um, um, it's not. I'm not on the. We're in port. We're in port. That's why I was sure the internet was going to have no problem today. But pray for our good man Fetterman. He had another stroke and he was rushed to hospital. So we'll see what happens. But we might not get our chance to do our 2024 campaign with him. That's okay. There's other people out there. Biden might be able to go again, so we could be okay. We could be fine, right? Because Biden is the lower IQ of the two, right? We would prefer Biden, frankly. And the criminality is just too good, so it's hard to deny the Biden family another chance of the way he walks, everything, it's just perfect. Like you can't beat it, right? I couldn't have picked a better symbol for US collapse, the end of the dollar, the beginning of the Bitcoin era, right? Just looking at him walk, looking at this idea that he's the leader of the free world. Think about that for a second, right? Remember the title that the president of the United States grew into in the way we format all of our talks here about the role, how it's organic, how it changed just by its practice. And Teddy Roosevelt started the role as we currently recognize that FDR really, colored in the corners and made sure that the role was as expansive now as we've come to understand it. And watching Biden occupy this office that was developed and cultivated over years is the best thing we could have ever hoped for as Bitcoiners, frankly. And 4 more years of him, well, we can survive. There's a lot of days, right? So I'm not sure anymore if we want 4 more years of him. But so far, so good. Really, so far, so good. So Jack Possibly offered up an old video from a few years ago about remember the Global Engagement Center, the thing that we talked about 2 days ago that Elon Musk brought to everyone's attention as the worst offender in the US systematic control of psychological operations and perception being reality and playing off of that. So here's what he said. He actually got this guy, and this guy was also the editor of Time magazine. Right? So he's the editor of Time magazine, and he was also the State Department head of the Global Engagement Center. His name was Richard Stengel. Now, the Time piece, I'm only going from his quote. I watched this video that Jack Posobiec shared, and so he shared this video. So he said the Times, and he was talking with the New York Times editor. So I don't know much about this guy's history. So if I misquoted that he was of Time magazine and I made a mistake, anyway, his name is Richard Stengel, and he was interested like a panel, right? Like I put panels together for Bitcoin 2023. Speaking of panels, we do have one called the Leader of the Free World, right? You'll see who that is one day when we announce it publicly. But it's Joe Biden. We're going to have Joe Biden, the Leader of the Free World, at Bitcoin 2023. Wouldn't you know it? And my show from 2 days ago, I do believe some exchange should hire Hunter Biden, please, already. That could be the end of our troubles. We got this problem now with a choke point thing coming in the OCC, the Office of the Controller of the Currency, choking Bitcoin relations with banks. Hire Hunter already. It all goes away, guys. Just hire Hunter Biden. We need him. He must be at one of these crypto casinos or something like that. It'll buy us some time, right? Hire him. What does it cost? I mean, what they pay at Meta by, I don't know, it's a couple $1,000,000. I'm sure someone can afford it, right? Let's go. So what did Richard Stengel say in this video that Jack shared of him on a panel? He says that the GEC and the US government doesn't just work in propaganda, right? It's not just about a few psyops. They actually run off of a master narrative. That's what he called it, the master narrative, right? And the master narrative is what is crumbling before our eyes. We see it everywhere around us. And that's why we are now closer than ever, and I mean imminent hyper-Bitcoinization. And let's go through what we saw yesterday, because if yesterday is really a pivot point, this could happen much quicker than any of us imagined, right? The table seems to be set as far as I can tell now. So the first thing let's talk about yesterday, again, so much happened yesterday, right? Now, one of the first things that happened, or one of the most important things that happened that I like to see, was this Yoel Roth guy. Right now, we don't think Yoel Roth is part of a cabal of Satanist pedophiles. Right? We don't believe that. Right? We don't believe that. However, watching him squirm, watching the weasel words yesterday as he was getting grilled by all kinds of people was one of the funniest and most pleasurable things I've had the occasion to watch in a long time. Right? If you haven't seen it yet, watch Lauren Boebert. Watch Marjorie Taylor Greene. Watch all of these people just roundhouse kick this weak loser again and again. And watch him try to lie without the ability to run away or hide behind Kira Swisher and all this stuff. So the moronic uptalk, right? He's one way to understand persuasion, right? Is really the way people talk, right? Now, if you're unconfident in your points of view, you'll often end on moronic uptalk, right? Today we're going to go and talk about the end of the world. We're going to talk about hyper-Bitcoinization and Bitcoin's great, right? That is not exactly persuasive, right? But if you say Bitcoin standard is the only way humans should live and understand economics, stronger, right? Just being able to end without the inflection is more persuasive. And Yoel Roth is one of those people who does just have that Valley Girl way of talking, and everything has to end on his moronic uptalk, right? And it was, we don't censor anyone, right? And yeah, moronic uptalk. It's not. I didn't invent it. Moronic uptalk is a real thing, right? So I'm not inventing moronic uptalk. Look at. I think there's a Wikipedia page on moronic uptalk. It's a real thing, right? Moronic uptalk. In where I come from, in my world, I had already years ago. There were mothers of friends of mine and stuff that if you said they'd tell you to leave and go get an education before you come back to their house. And absolutely, moronic uptalk was never ever 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 allowed in some of the environments that I grew up in and around. Right, it was just not welcome already then. So so moronic uptalk is really a thing, Dex. It's a total thing, right? It's not not my invention, right? All kinds of people lament the increase of moronic uptalk in American discourse, right? It's pervasive now. Moronic uptalk is a way that lots of people communicate because they're mostly pre-programmed NPCs and are unconvinced of anything they think. Right? They have zero convictions. One of my favorite quotes about that can apply it to politicians, but it was Groucho Marx who said it, right? And this is sort of the psychological precursor to moronic uptalk. It's And most politicians live by it, right? It's, I have my principles, and if you don't like them, I have some more. I have some more. That's a great example of moronic up talk. Um, yeah, the stream did mess up, guys. This don't know what happened, and I guess Twitter is not happening on this stream either. I don't know why. It didn't give me a. I thought I selected Twitter anyway. Don't know what happened, guys. Yoel Roth got smashed yesterday, right? And it was obvious, right? I don't have a recollection. I don't have a recollection. And trying to go on about the things he didn't remember and how he wasn't that bad and wasn't that evil. And so you got people just bringing the receipts and smashing him in the face one after the other, right? And it was great. You can already get a taste of whatever Nuremberg 2.0 is coming after hyper-Bitcoinization, and we get all these criminals out of the system and we start cleaning stuff up. There's going to be a lot of fun, by the way. This stuff is going to be great, right? So Yoel Roth is going to have to wear this for the rest of his life, and whatever he went through yesterday, I don't think he'll ever recover from. That's what I saw. I saw the end of someone's ego. I saw the end of someone's um, um, perception of their own self. I saw the mirror turned on someone. Cognitive dissonance is the only way he can go forward. He can deny and feel sick for a long time and get angry. But eventually, I saw just a little bit. Maybe I'm mind reading, but I saw a little bit of light crack through on that guy and a little bit of understanding that, oh, maybe I'm the baddie, right? So maybe I'm reading into it. Maybe I'm adding my own master narrative here, but that's what I saw. And a lot of people commented on it. So Jonathan Turley said, Roth says that it would not surprise him if visibility filters were placed on the accounts of elected officials without their knowledge. So that's what it was all about. Did he put the filters on? They got him talking with American GEC and those others on Jira, so a cloud-based server, so that they couldn't track the information. And he said, I don't know if I did that. And they brought all these examples of him actually talking bilaterally on this thing. So not that good. Elon Musk answered back to Jonathan Turley about the visibility filters and the surprise. And he says, since he placed many of them there himself, he would indeed not be surprised. Laugh my ass off. So good for Elon for jumping in, and that was a lot of fun. So, and then everyone just smashing him, right? Um, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you permanently banned my Twitter account, but you allowed child porn all over Twitter. And it goes on and on and on, these examples, right? So that's one of the big exclamation marks on the Twitter files now that this thing yesterday happened and was pretty interesting. But not only that, everyone's been talking recently about how, we talked about the original guys that worked for the CIA, that went and worked for Twitter. Yesterday, big news came out that Facebook has not just some little guy in charge of stuff, right? They have a person whose entire life was dedicated, adult life was dedicated to the Democrat Party as part of the CIA, who joined Facebook's head of fact checking, right? So Glenn Greenwald underlined it, saying, it is vital to remember it wasn't just Twitter that censored the Biden reporting before the 2020 election. Facebook did too. They announced it through lifelong Dem operative Andy M. Stone. Notably, the fact check he claimed Facebook was doing never came. It's really amazing who Facebook chose to announce to the world that the tech giant would be algorithmically suppressing the New York Post's incriminating reporting about the Democrat presidential candidate. He devoted his entire life to empowering the Democrat Party. So now, I mean, that almost takes care of the social media giants. And what a surprise. How did this happen? The internet in America was down yesterday. All this stuff going on, and you couldn't use any site to talk about it. Twitter was down, YouTube was down, Facebook was down, Instagram was down. They're all down, right? And we'll get back to that. But is that what America's become? Have we become the country that when people had it too much, we don't have an internet anymore? I thought that was in like Iran and other places. Well, apparently it's here now, but which is going to be a good thing. We'll talk about master narratives again, right? Who are we? We're at that point now in the master narrative. Who are we? Right? That's what individuation is all about. We are actually encountering our shadow. Are we the goodies or the baddies? Right? What you saw Yoel Roth going through yesterday, and what you're seeing these folks go through, is happening on a canvas and a size and a scale that Americans have never seen before. Right? So the internet had to go down yesterday. But what was the big story yesterday, right? So Yoel Roth was there, Facebook, the internet was down, a little bit about Hunter's laptop. He had some stuff. We're going to get to that. But the biggest story yesterday was from uh, a journalist, right? A journalist named, now, I barely knew about this guy, but it turns out he's the biggest deal. Seymour Hersh, right? His name is Seymour Hersh. So who is Seymour Hersh? He's a longtime writer for the New Yorker. And when I say longtime writer, that's important because his professional career dates back to the 1960s. And he seems to be on a crisscross path with the most vital and important stories in American history. Weirdly, the guy who is now confirmed, he released a Substack yesterday. So he's an idiot now because he's on Substack, right? He's a total moron, apparently. But Seymour Hersh, lifelong establishment journalist, right? But never played the game. He comes from a time before the CIA seemed to have infiltrated these people. He comes from a time before. Yeah. Oh, come on now. Could you not know? I didn't know, guys. I was not a Seymour Hersh. I didn't know much about the guy, honestly. I mean, I must have known some stuff about him, but never really filtered in. So here's Seymour, right? Here's Seymour. Seymour Hersh did the Gulf of Tonkin story, right? Like that's a pretty big story, right? The original false flag that launched the Vietnam War, right? The thing that we've talked about on this show before, LBJ, Kennedy just died, all of a sudden we're at war, what's going on, right? We've talked about that a few times on the show. Seymour Hersh did that, and people called him crazy back then, right? What happened after that is Seymour Hersh is also the guy who broke the Abu Ghraib story in Iraq when American army men were torturing and humiliating Iraqi prisoners. One of the worst stories in the history of the American master narrative that you'll ever find, ever, right? So, two of the stories that completely negate the master narrative of America, the good, were written by Seymour Hersh, maybe the last real journalists in the world, right? So Seymour Hersh came out with a Substack yesterday about the NordStream bombing. And what did he find? But Biden ordered it from the CIA, right? So this was a Biden planned for months project, apparently, branch effort to blow up for geopolitical reasons and to make sure Europe didn't fall under the sway of Russian oil influence or natural gas influence. Seems to be, right, to take away the negotiating chip, seems to be what happened. Now, a lot of people knew and had an idea, and that it wasn't what the mainstream media said. Oh, this was Russia doing it to themselves, right? I mean, we dismissed the Russia doing it themselves right there, right? That it was ridiculous. So, from that point of view, right, this reporting has caused a huge reverberation, right? A huge reverberation. And so, what does it say, right? Here's the thread from Kanakoa Substack. Last June, the Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Balltops 22 planted the remotely triggered explosives. So it turns out that there was a thing that we all knew about. Divers went down there in the summer, and it was just an exercise, right? And that was the beginning. Here's the second tweet. Biden, if Russia invades, then there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. Reporter, how will you do that exactly, since the project is in Germany's control? Biden, I promise you, we will be able to do that. And then you get Victoria Newland, who we've mentioned here before in Ukraine-related discussions. If Russia invades Ukraine one way or the other, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward. She said that in January 2022. Tucker Carlson, this is the fourth tweet. If you were Vladimir Putin, you would have to be a suicidal moron to blow up your own energy pipeline. Natural gas pipelines are the main source of your power and your wealth, and most critically, your leverage over other countries. Europe needs your energy. And if you remember, one of the 51 known liars of the Hunter Biden earmarks of Russian disinformation, Clapper, was actually, and John Brennan. They were both brought onto the mainstream news in America to say that this was actually what they argued, right? I'm not even going to comment on it, right? They argued that Putin blew it up because he was about to default on commercial agreements for delivery of whatever. And if he didn't blow it up, he would default on these commercial agreements, and that would ruin his commercial reputation. So they argue that he blew up a pipeline to preserve his commercial reputation. That's what that is the master narrative. That's what they came up with. Right? That's it. I'm not going to add any more flavor to it or color. That's the master narrative. That was the logic that was presented to the mainstream media when the pipeline blew up. That was it, right? He had commercial agreements. He was going to have to default. He's in big financial trouble. Blow it up, and then it goes away, right? So there you go. The CIA warned authorities in Berlin 3 months before the Nord Stream pipeline was sabotaged of the possibility that someone would destroy the pipelines. I wonder how they knew. 6. The people who told you Iraq was weapons of mass destruction want you to believe Russia blew up its own pipeline. The U.S. government previously lied to Americans into war using the Gulf of Tonkin, USS Maine, RMS Lusitania, Iraqi incubator babies, and WMDs. The gas pipelines were sabotaged near Bornholm in the Baltic Sea. The leaks occurred in areas where the pipelines lie at sufficiently shallow depths to plant explosives. The U.S. Navy and NATO held a major maritime training exercise in the Baltic Sea involving scores of ships throughout the region. It was held off the coast of Bornholm Island and involved teams of divers who happened to be planting and locating explosives. The U.S. Navy posted pictures of themselves planting mock explosives in the Baltic Sea where the pipelines would explode 3 months later. But don't worry, it was a training exercise. Uncle Joe, the climate change warrior, would never blow up a natural gas pipeline in the ocean, right? If Joe truly cared, his son Hunter wouldn't be invested in the world's most polluting Chinese government-owned oil, gas, and coal companies. Professor Henry Sachs caused chaos in Bloomberg for suggesting the U.S. government was behind the Nord Stream sabotage, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which is action, right? And on Joe Rogan, you had comic Dave Smith break down the reasons Russia invaded Ukraine. The most important priority in the history of humanity is that America and Russia do not go to war, right? And they broke down had been overthrowing Ukraine government. All these Soros-funded NGOs, funded militias on the ground. There's a tape of Victoria Nuland talking about who would be the new government. We overthrew their government. The Obama administration overthrew Ukraine's elected government in 2014. John McCain rallied protesters, and Victoria Nuland was caught on tape planning Ukraine's new government. What role did this have in the current NATO proxy war in Ukraine? After the U.S. overthrew Ukraine's government in 2014, 96% of Luhansk and 89% of Donetsk voted to secede from Ukraine. The West said the elections were illegitimate, but the eastern half of Ukraine typically votes for pro-Russia candidates, right? So from here, you just get a sense of this military-industrial complex and exactly what level of priority they got, which is absolute. Right? They got absolute priority. Now you've got Mike Lee saying, I'm troubled that I can't immediately rule out the suggestion that the U.S. blew up Nord Stream. I checked with a bunch of Senate colleagues. Among those I've asked, none were ever briefed on this. If it turns out to be true, we've got a huge problem. Even Apple News writing yesterday, U.S. carried out Nord Stream bomb attack in top secret Biden-led plan. Daily Mail says the same, right? Did Biden give the order to destroy Putin's Nord Stream pipeline after Ukraine invasion? Bombshell report claims Navy divers carried out mission to kill Russia's gas stranglehold on Europe, an audacious mission overseen by president. And they give the details here, right? So lots of folks weighing in. You've got Jordan Peterson saying this is very troubling indeed, right? Senate was never asked. This is probably an act of war, right? Wouldn't you imagine this is an act of war? Now, America, the president does not have the ability to declare war, right? He doesn't have that ability, right? He has to ask Congress. America's gotten around for it for years by calling it different things. It's an operation. It's an executive branch thing, and da 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 da. But this would probably, between nuclear powers, qualify as something else, right? So that's what happened yesterday. Now, this stuff is going to be simmering in people's minds, right? And we've got all this chatter, right? At the same time as all that's going on, right? People looking more into the Hunter Biden laptop case, right? That had a whole bunch of hearings yesterday. You even had AOC say it's half fake. It was half fake, right? What was the half that's fake and what's the half that's real? We don't know. AOC displaying all signs of cognitive dissonance here. Of course, gibberish to say something is half fake. Who knows what that means, right? But when we start looking at these connections, right? When we start looking at these connections between the divers and mainstream media and the NordStream bomb and Hunter Biden in Ukraine, Michael Schellenberger has shared a series of headlines, right? Everything flowing from this Seymour Hersh report and what exactly went on afterwards, right? So here's the headlines. He just gathered them to show how the messaging system works, right? Russians push baseless theory blaming U.S. for burst pipeline. This was back in September, right? Possible. This is from Reuters. Possible sabotage on gas pipelines would be in no one's interest, says Blinken again in September when it happened. Here's the logic that Reuters used. Ultimately, this is also a tremendous opportunity. Sorry, this is what Blinken said after he said it's in no one's interest, right? This is you know how the headline sometimes can not match up at all with the article, like they're totally the opposite thing, right? So you get Blinken in the headline saying it's in no one's interest to blow up the pipeline. Don't look at me, right? Blinken, he's Blinken. Ultimately, this is also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs. That's very significant and it offers tremendous strategic opportunity for the years to come. But it's in no one's interest, even though it offers immense strategic opportunity, right? Can you believe that they would write a title with a story that is not even connected, right? Here's another one. Conspiracy theorists, right-wing politicians fueled Nord Stream disinformation, right? The U.S., not Russia, was responsible for the Nord Stream pipeline explosion. They claim that this claim spread fast online. An analysis of 500,000 tweets shows, right? Here's from the Brookings Institute, right? U.S. podcasters spread Kremlin narratives on Nord Stream sabotage, right? So, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem if the president is going out there doing these things and the media is completely running cover for him, right? To this extent, So you start to understand that, this thing is a finely tuned engine. It's not just one-off mistakes, right? This thing's got torque. It runs when they need it to run. It's a button that can be pushed on and off. It's that responsive, right? This is a machine. And war clandestine breaks down exactly how and why this might be happening, right? It talks about the potential. Here's the master narrative, right? According to War Clandestine, who we've been following for a while, breaks down World War III is between BRICS and NATO, and those who fall under the influence and psyop of one broadcasting narrative entity, one master narrative versus another master narrative, right? So in this case, what he mentions is that this is War Clandestine's belief, right? That the United States and Biden himself was willing to risk nuclear and kinetic war to cover up his personal dealings in Ukraine with Hunter Biden, right? Now, does that make any sense? Well, from what we know of Hunter's dealings in Ukraine and what we know from the laptop, from the Marco Polo findings and the hundreds of criminal potential infractions that were found in the laptop, right, without even really reading into them, right, here's what War Clandestine says, right? War Clandestine, important thread. Newsweek put out an article pertaining to the connections between Hunter Biden and Metabiota, which also included a fact check, right? So Newsweek fact checked the Zelensky Hunter Biden story because the one that War Clandestine shared, where it was a translated document from Ukrainian English on the day of the attack, February 24th or whatever, 22nd, I can't remember exactly, a year ago, ordering the destruction of all documents related to whatever bioweapons Metabiota was developing in Ukraine, right? So Newsweek fact-checked all of this stuff, right? Did not fact-check War Clandestine handle, who is the person who I first saw offer this information, right? Other people have. DC Drano is one of the accounts that Newsweek fact-checks, even though he's not the source. He was always just referencing War Clandestine, right? So important thread. Newsweek put out an article pertaining to the connections between Hunter Biden and Medobiota, which has also included a fact check on the Ukrainian MOD, Ministry of Defense, decree to destroy docs associated with biolab company Medobiota. So here's the fact check, right? So even now, as Hunter looks into legal action surrounding the claims attached to the laptop, social media speculation continues, right? So I'll go back one step further. They actually are following Hunter Biden's legal action to stop people from talking about the laptop, right? So criticism of President Joe Biden's son has been fierce, with him only last week taking legal action surrounding the laptop saga, calling for a probe against allies of former President Donald Trump and others who have made public allegations about him. Now, remember, he's threatening people, right? And if you, we even went through the Keystone Cops legal documents. The first one was they stole the laptop, right? And then they had to realize that admits the laptop is real. So they stole something that might or might not exist. So they had to correct it, right? They had to correct it. They stole something that might or might not exist. So the president's son is using the legal system, and the attorney general, who his father hired years ago and is now the attorney general of Delaware, they use their home state. So imagine that the senator from Delaware, who became vice president, is now the president, has a lot of connections to the Democrat Party in Delaware, right? So the AG, the current AG, who worked privately for the Biden family for years, been supporting him and all that, is the person who is helping bring charges against the laptop repairman, right? The laptop repairman is getting sued by Hunter Biden for stealing what might exist. That's the story, right? Going with. Now, imagine we're supposed to think of the master narratives, right? So the master narrative of America now has to reconcile being the leader of the free world and the Democrat beacon of hope versus don't make fun of my son and do anything against him, or we're going to use the legal system to go after you, right? And the context is, remember, he stole something, the laptop repairman, which may or may not exist. So he might have stolen something which doesn't exist, but that's enough. That's enough, right? So unbelievably, right? So, but only now is he taking legal action, they say, right? And they try to break it down. The relationship between Hunter Biden, Medobiota, and Ukraine is not well explained in the tweet, and the details of which are important before we consider the translated letter dictating a decree of Ukraine, right? An investigation by the Washington Post stated that the firm linked to Rosemont Seneca, Hunter Biden's former investment company, invested money and raised money for Medobiota. That's true, they say. Around the same time, spending records show the U.S. Department of Defense invested more than $18 million into Medobiota. The Post investigation reported that a relatively small portion of the funding was listed for Ukraine research programs, as federal contracting records state. Right? Only a small portion of that 18 million. Only a small portion. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's only a small portion. As reported by PolitiFact, since 2005, the U.S. government has partnered with the Ukrainian government, investing $200 million into the labs. Right? Oh, okay. But it's failing the fact check here, right? As such, the link between Medobiota, Hunter Biden, and Ukraine here is tenuous. While the firm associated with Rosemont Seneca invested and raised money for Medobiota, there is no link here between the president's son, Zelensky, and the destruction of the documents. Crucially, however, the letter now being shared on social media with the decree of the president ordering the destruction of the documents is completely, they say. So the document that they say is completely, I don't have any proof of the document, but what's their reasoning, right? What do they reason, right? It's got naming conventions that are off, formatting errors, and incorrect references, right? And they got this from a Russian independent news site, The Insider, they say, that already broke it down. Russian independent news insider, right? What is Russian independent news insider? An unnamed source in this case, right? What is it? We don't know, right? They're just saying it's a Russian independent news. Does the CIA or U.S. master narrative controllers ever fund media in foreign jurisdictions? I don't know. You tell me. The date on the letter, right, is the day that Russian forces launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine, when Zelensky would have had many pressing issues on his head. So he says he's too busy to bother with this lab stuff, the bioweapons, even though everyone says that's the reason why this is happening. So even if the link between Hunter Biden and Medobaida's work in Ukraine was not already week. The fabricated letter is not evidence that he was involved in destruction of papers related to Metabiota. Newsweek has contacted DC Drano, but they didn't want to say anything, right? So it's false, they say. It's false, right? This is what War Clandestine says about it. You'll notice they opted to make DC Drano their target in the hit piece, despite the fact that I put out the information and O'Hanley even cited I put it out. Interesting that they opted to leave me alone in all of this. Now let's break down the flaws in the article. Newsweek confirms that Hunter Biden secured Department of Defense funding for Metabiota versus his position in Rosemont, Seneca, meaning Newsweek just admitted the U.S. funds biolabs in Ukraine, and he has a laughing face, laughing emoji. Then they quote PolitiFact, who back in February 2022 said there are no U.S. biolabs in Ukraine, right? This is the article. There are no U.S.-run biolabs in Ukraine, contrary to social media posts, right? This is the Victoria Newland saying they exist, right? PolitiFact can't keep their story straight. In February 2022, the labs didn't exist at all. But then by April, the labs exist, but Hunter Biden wasn't funding them. Now in February 23, the labs exist and Hunter secured funds for them, but there's no connection to Zelensky, right? Changing narratives, which is what cognitive dissonance looks like. That's another one. You change the story, change the narrative, right? The goalposts continue to move all over the place. All the things they said weren't real in the first place end up being real. They have directly contradicted themselves over and over, right? PolitiFact, Newsweek have zero credibility. They claim the document I shared was bogus based on a Russian news outlet claiming the document isn't real based on a hunch. Well, if their source is a Russian news outlet, here's a Russian news outlet saying the document is real, right? So he provides another one. Ironic. Whenever I cite Russian media outlets, the left Russian disinformation. When Newsweek cites a Russian propaganda outlet, they use it to call me Russian disinformation. This is the link, right? He shares the link, right? Now, you get that, right? And at the same time, Zelensky is doing his tour of Europe. This is what the master narratives in England, right? This is the mainstream press reporting on Zelensky being in Europe and UK yesterday. UK to look into sending Ukraine fighter planes after Zelensky visit. Why this visit was a major coup for Brexit Britain. Zelensky, these are all just headlines, right? Zelensky knows Britain is still the leader of Europe. France will help Ukraine to victory against Russia, vows Macron. Rishi Sunak may be keen to send Ukraine jets, but trouble is on the horizon. I sat in Churchill's armchair and felt his bravery, says Zelensky. Word had spread, and in crammed Westminster Hall, Zelensky delivered his speech. Sunak makes his move to outflank the US and Germany. A massive wake-up call, Telegraph journalists give their views on Zelensky's historic visit. Germany won't engage in a bidding war support for Ukraine, Scholz vows. So that is the collection of headlines that came yesterday just from him visiting, right? Just from him visiting. So what does this mean for Bitcoin, right? Now, we understand that all of this is a psychological battlefront, right? The battle lines of World War III are economic and psychological. And when the psychological element kicks in, right, America only wins if America Inc., USA Inc., only wins if everyone buys this master narrative. Everyone has to buy it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Everyone bought it in World War II, right? Everybody bought it. Everyone bought that America was fighting for freedom. Everyone bought it in World War I, right? But I think the master narratives now are starting to be unwound. And Americans are finding out a lot more about their own history and what's happened in the world since World War I. And I think eventually the master narrative back to World War I. Right? I think it's going to peel back to World War I. It's going to peel back to World War I because Bitcoiners have an understanding of what happened. You know, we go to 1971 a lot. We go to Bretton Woods in the 40s a lot, right? The results of World War II and how the US dollar was made the hegemonic monetary instrument and had the monopoly over the energy markets. And it's how we measured energy markets because the main energy market on earth was the monopoly of oil for USD, maintained by maritime dominance of the United States aircraft carriers, Air Force, and all the other military industrial complex tools that were developed from this coordination. So we can go back now basically to World War I when the Federal Reserve came in, the bank cartel. And when the bank cartel came in, right, what else came in? The Social Security, right? And what happened immediately then is America, with this new banking instrument, England as part of it, attacked the gold-based nations of Germany and Austro-Hungarian Empire. So what happened there? What happened there? And then Russia was on its own trouble, right, with its revolution and these things. So what happened there was, in those years, the Germans, the Kaiser, everyone asked for peace, just like Russia and China have asked for peace recently, right? They asked for peace. But if you have a debt-based system, you can run it hot. It costs you nothing to go to war, right? You have no more feedback loop and you don't have a cost of war. The gold-based nations and all their beautiful architecture, right? Where did that come from? That came from time preference of a society who had gathered and saved their wealth and money over years and created some of the most beautiful cities you'll ever see. I mean, Budapest, right? Budapest is what you build when your country is wealthy because you made the money and saved it. It's what happens when you have for architecture and prints for the way humans are meant to live. And they did not have a fiat system. They had kings and other folks like that that were there to protect your freedoms. All right. Now, here's where the master narrative goes wrong. Here's where America takes freedom, right, which is really just an individual practice. You get freedom by practicing freedom. You get freedom by acting free, by doing things that are free. You don't get freedom because you voted for someone and they gave you freedom. That's not how it works, right? But that's the trick. That's the master narrative. The master narrative became, after World War I, and especially World War II, freedom became the political system. The literal political system became the analogy for freedom, right? Not how we live individually. How we lived individually stopped being the reference, right? So that's what Bitcoin is going to help us reshape, right? We don't have to wait for permission as Bitcoiners to be in the end game and to be in a hyper Bitcoinized world. What we need to do is not give these people money anymore, right? They've abdicated all rights to money and taxation, right? COVID and everything else. What I said when COVID started, I continue to live by. I said, okay, I've had enough. These people have abdicated all authority over me. I don't have to listen to them and I won't, right? I will cheat and lie and steal in this whole system all the time now, right? I'm not against them, not against my fellow Americans, Canadians, people in the world, right? But against the system. I won't listen to it anymore. I'm going to do what I can to avoid and wait it out. I'm going to wait this thing out, right? Because it can't last. It cannot last. As Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided cannot stand, right? And what he really meant was the psychological conditions that are this divided, that are this bipolar, right? We're entering a bipolar world. When we say bipolar, we mean the master narrative is already cracked. It's cracked. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore, right? No one believes it. Nobody believes this crap, right? Hunter Biden, no one believes these people. And when you see Joe walking, right, when you see the shuffle, the dementia, right, he is demented. Demented. He has dementia, and that's where you get demented. He has the demented walk, the shuffle, the cluelessness, right? That's what's going on. That is what's going on. So America now, right, has a chance to really change because we now understand that our freedom doesn't actually come from America Inc. and Washington, D.C. It always came from us and the way we live our lives. And if we're not willing to be free, we will lose, right? We will lose. But that's why Bitcoiners are ahead of this game. We've understood for a long time that freedom comes from our own individual practices. It's not something that trickles down from a government, right? We're I think we're back. Back. We're back. We're back. Go back. I think we're back. I think we're back. Let me see if we're back. Mm-hmm. We're aware, guys, and in the end, yeah, back, yes. We're aware of what's going on, and the advantage that Bitcoin has brought is this capacity to reorient our master narrative, right? And our master narrative really starts with the separation of state and money. That's what we have to do, and that's what's going to happen, right? There's no way after all of this, and it's going to continue to percolate over the next few days and weeks, right? But things are about to change, right? And you say it's fascinating seeing the media feed on Biden like sharks. Perfect for Bitcoin, absolutely, right? And I don't think it's going to stop. I think I continue to believe that the image of him shuffling around, and even the title. Remember the title, the leader of the free. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. I don't even have to add anything. If you put him, a picture of him, and say the leader of the free world, the joke is made. It's over, right? And that's what the master narrative has always, that's the linchpin of the master narrative. The US president is the leader of the free world. It's not. Satoshi Nakamoto is, right? Satoshi Nakamoto is the leader of the free world because he's the person who figured out how to separate money and state. Now, state and politics are just going to be what we need them for. Remember where the word politics even comes from, right? It's an old French word that comes from opportunist, right? It's an opportunist. And how these opportunists became the godhead of an entire idolatrous religion in the end, right? People who honor and pray towards the gods of democracy are making a mistake, right? Which is the great news about Bitcoin. We have no gods. We don't pray to anyone. There's nothing like that. We thank Satoshi and we move on with our lives, right? But we know now that the leader of the free world is literally all of us, right? Anyone who is practicing it is the leader of the free world, right? The leader of the free world wagging his finger saying how patience is wearing thin for the unjabbed. Yeah, no, I mean, and there you go, right? The having the leader of the free world even destroying the brain dead cliches. Do you know how great it is to have someone use as a exclamation point in an argument, I follow the science? You can't beat that, right? Because it's the dumbest sentence in the English language today. It's the dumbest. There's nothing you can say stupider than I believe in science. There's nothing you can say that is dumber than that, right? You believe in science? What? What are you talking about, right? It's a belief system? Okay. You can say all you want. I love the scientific method, right? I use the scientific method to analyze the world around me. That's 100% the way you should think. Everyone should think about the scientific method. It's a real thing, right? But it's a limited tool because you don't always get science out of the scientific method. Sometimes you get a ball of confusion, right? And that's okay, right? Science is not meant to solve every problem on Earth. It's just a frame to look and solve problems with. That's it. Sometimes good, sometimes useless, right? But it's not a thing you follow. Of course, the point of science, we all know, was to get rid of following in belief systems, right? It's not a belief system. It's a system to analyze the world, and that's it. It's not a belief system, right? Religions, things you idolatrize are idolize our belief systems, right? So we've idolized this thing, and that's why we're in this shape that we're in, right? Idolatry is for imbeciles, absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. But here we are. Here we are. All right, let's get to some comments here. This was a different one, right? This was what's this baby step iron? It was over 50 years when I was a kid, so we're making progress. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're making it. We're making it. We're making it. Yeah, we're making it. This may be the final plan to get rid of Biden. Yeah, I do see it happening, right? I do see the narrative shifting, but I don't think they can recover. I think it's too late. I believed that at the time, right? When I endorsed Biden as the winner of the 2020 election within a day, I guess, even the night that Trump lost, right? I saw the upside. I saw the upside. If they want to go with this guy, it's perfect. As Bitcoiners, right, we needed to change the office of the president. Obama was too strong, too strong. Hard to beat that narrative, master narrative control that he had, right? Super guy. I wouldn't want to go saber rattling against that guy. He knows how to run these psyops better than anyone, right? Better than anyone. He's incredibly good at it. So that was the benefit of having Trump, was that you could tell he was not a part of it. And he was so triggering to some people that he was going to change our perception and the master narrative of what the president is. And now the master narrative has changed, right? The master narrative has changed. And Trump did it. But the election of Trump allowed for the election of the guy with the low brain quality and the dementia, the demented guy who can't even walk, right? So now it's actually a proper joke when you call the president of the United States the leader of the free world. It's funny, like it's a punchline, and that puts us in a good space, right? I think we're in a good space. Has anyone ever wondered, as a corrupt country, year after year up until 2021? Yeah, I'm telling you, I had trouble when I worked with Kraken. Even getting bank rails with Ukraine is very, very hard. They're cut off from ATM. They can't get an ATM card that works abroad in Ukraine. That's why the Bitcoin penetration is so large there. That's why I've known Bitcoiners in Ukraine for a long time, right? I almost went to Ukraine with Bitcoin related business. Several times I've been invited, but too crazy. I was even invited for one of these election things, by the way, with probably deep state actors, right? I was invited, I think in 2010, to their election, one of their big ones. But they told me I would have to go to a prison to see who was cheating in elections. I'm not going to spend time in a prison. Jesus Christ. No way. I feel terrible about the new gens who gobble up all this propaganda like it's truth. Yeah, but that's changing, dude. That is changing. It really is. Look at all the young people that are getting into Bitcoin, right? Look at all the young people that I mean, just look one of the other big victories. It's you're gonna say it in NordStream, right? NordStream streamers, because of the Hogwarts thing, are having their own victory lap right now, right? Messaging was attempted, messaging was used in order to basically propagandize against what's going on. Got some folks on my porch propagandizing against people, or promoting hatred towards people who like J.K. Rowling, and there's been all kinds of mental illness on display, right? You can't play a video game, but there's been a big hit and people love it. Critics hate it, but the fans love it. Tons of people using it, and streaming that, I think, changed a lot of people's minds. Innocent people who would have normally been very, very pro LGBTQ plus, which I am, very pro LGBTQ plus, but I don't want anyone getting angry at J.K. Rowling. She's allowed her opinion. I don't have a problem with J.K. Rowling either, right? None. Like, we live in a complicated world. The science is another rhetorical collective noun. Read, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the science, follow the science, right? The dumbest thing you can say, right? Yeah, my body is my temple, therefore I'm a church and I'm already exempt from taxation. Good idea. Yeah, we got to play all these games, all these games. Maybe we should make Bitcoin a religion, though. Yeah, I have no problem with that. I've been trying to make Bitcoin meetups religion for a while. There we go. All right, team. Thanks for showing up today. Thanks for your patience. I'm glad the stream worked. I was really worried. Let me know how the audio was today, and let me know if this system that I have on the boat is working, or if I should indeed pre-record and just debut them live at 9 or your 8 a.m. I'm an hour ahead these days. So let me know. Let me know in the comments if everything's going okay. I prefer the live, though. I don't ever want to get rid of the. I don't want to get rid of the interaction, guys. I really think it's a big part of what makes this show fun, right? Is that there is interaction, and that it's not just a monologue, right? I mean, it's heavily on a monologue side, but putting the stories together, but there's interaction, and I think it's important. I need the interaction. All right, team. Peace.